I'm going to call this meeting of the subcommittee regarding shared town manager services to order. If we would please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we are still waiting for one more member, I would entertain a motion for a 5-minute recess.
So moved.
Do we have it?
Oh, there he is.
Not a problem.
I'm sorry, my phone died.
How are you?
Could you?
Good, thank you.
All right. Is anyone audio or video recording? If you would let us know, please. Okay, we have 2. Thank you. First order of business would be to appoint a chairman of the subcommittee. I will open the floor for nominations.
I would like to nominate Audrey as chairman.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'll entertain nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Cameron Forts as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that passed unanimously. Thank you. So we're here tonight to review the draft intermunicipal agreement between the towns of Winchendon and Templeton. We are a subcommittee of the Winchendon Board of Selectmen and the Templeton Board of Selectmen. We don't have our name tags in front of us. To my right is Mike Barbaro from Winchendon. My name's Audie Labrie from Winchendon. And if you would, I know it's Diane.
I'm Diane Haley Brooks. I'm the select woman in Templeton.
Cameron Forts, Selectman at Templeton.
Okay, thank you. So, we haven't met before, we haven't talked about this. My suggestion would be start with the document, go through it section by section, make sure that we understand what each section would do. Mm-hmm. If we have any questions, tweaks, or whatever, and then once we go through the entire section, the entire document, if we feel comfortable with it, have a final copy drawn up, or take a second meeting in order to finalize things.
Excellent.
Does that sound all right with everyone?
Sure.
Okay. For the purpose of this subcommittee discussion, I am going to invoke the public is present and welcome, but I personally am not going to acknowledge any comments from the public this evening. We will be bringing whatever we decide. Nothing has been decided yet. Whatever this subcommittee decides will be brought before the joint boards, and at that point, public comment will be welcome. All right, Mrs. Cabasaro.
My concern about this, my name is Janet Corbacero, and my concern is that you are working on a contract, obviously, so that says somebody has said, we want to go forward with this. And I'm curious, if you are talking about changing how our town manager works, going from full-time to part-time, and how you can even figure that out would be amazing to me. But the concern I have is this a legitimate way to go about doing it, having just the select board involved and not have the town? Are we changing, do you see what I'm asking? Are we changing the charter and/or our bylaws, and therefore to change that, you can't just do it, I don't believe. I believe it would have to go to town meeting. I don't know, that's what I'm asking.
Sure. Ms. Barber?
The former town manager had an agreement where he was allowed to work another job.
But not part-time.
It was part-time. He worked,
No, he didn't work here part-time. He worked here full-time. He worked here full-time.
but he was allowed to work another job.
Yes, but I don't think that's her point.
That's not my point.
I do recall Mr. Blake in earlier discussions.
I don't know who Mr. Blake is.
Zach Blake. I just had his card here.
From the State Department of...
He's from the Division of Local Services, and
Bureau
he
chief.
assisted the town of Lee and Lennox to put their chief administrative officer together.
And
I'm still,
we will verify, absolutely, Janet, I understand your concern. He had indicated that an intramural agreement does not need to be presented to town meeting.
Okay, and my concern is if you have a meeting tonight and you meet one more night and then you bring it to the Board of Selectmen, nobody has a chance to say anything. And it is 5 people making a decision that would dramatically change how our town works. So I just have to say, I'm very concerned about this. That's why I'm here tonight.
Sure.
But thank you for allowing me to at least say that.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
you.
Okay, so we'll, okay, the witness, the whereas, Winchendon currently has full-time municipal manager under contract, and Templeton will have a vacancy in its municipal manager position on July 1st, 2017. Whereas the parties seek to share the services of a single municipal manager to be referred to as the chief administrative officer. And whereas more efficient and effective municipal government administration would be realized through the parties' sharing of a chief administrative officer. Now, therefore, in consideration of the mutual agreements contained herein, the parties agree as follows. All right, section 1-1. The chief, you're right if I just read this out loud and then
Yeah, absolutely.
questions? Okay, yep, that way it's part of the record. The chief administrative officer shall perform the duties related to municipal government administration for Winchendon and Templeton under the policy guidance of the select boards in each community as detailed below. B, when providing services for the town of Winchendon, 1, the chief administrative officer shall perform the duties as defined by this agreement, the bylaws and policies of Winchendon, as well as other duties as the Winchendon Board of Selectmen shall from time to time assign, and shall perform said duties in a competent and professional manner. Part 2, Chief Administrative Officer shall report directly to the Board of Selectmen of Winchendon. Part C, when providing services for the town of Templeton. 1, the Chief Administrative Officer shall perform the duties as defined by this agreement, the bylaws and policies of Templeton, as well as other duties as the Templeton Board of Selectmen shall from time to time assign, and shall perform said duties in a competent and professional manner. Chief Administrative Officer shall report directly to the Board of Selectmen of Templeton. So that is,
Do you want to finish each section, and then if there are any questions, we
That's-
can go...
That's
Yeah,
what I was going
say.
to request too, that we just, do we
This
like,
was-
not like any discussion on each section?
yeah, this was section 1.1 under Article 1, and next is Article, so and under Article 1, any thoughts, comments? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It just states that he, shall perform the duties as agreed upon, bylaws, policies, et cetera, of the two towns.
Yep.
Okay. Article 2, Section 2-1, Appointment, Term of Office, and Qualifications. Parties shall appoint the Chief Administrative Officer to serve for such term as specified in an employment agreement. The Chief Administrative Officer shall devote his or her full time to the office and shall not hold any other public office, elected or appointed, nor shall the Chief Administrative Officer engage in any other business, occupation, or profession unless such action is approved in advance by the parties. The parties may, by amendment of this intermunicipal agreement, establish other qualifications for the office of Chief Administrative Officer. 2-1, my only comment there, it says as specified in an employment agreement. So, Mike, does this?
That would be a contract,
It would be a separate
separate contract.
document.
This is for us to do, then we have to draw up a
Right.
contract for each community.
Yeah, I believe that's, Mr. Hickey had spoke about that, saying that it would be more or less his contract with his, hours, wages, and all that. So
Right.
that would be two specified agreements.
Okay,
That
so
would be hammered out.
this is kind of the overall, and then the two individuals.
Right.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Section 2-2, Powers and Duties. The Chief Administrative Officer shall be responsible to the parties for the proper administration of all municipal affairs placed under his or her charge. The powers and duties of the Chief Administrative Officer shall include, but are not intended to be limited to, the following. A, supervise, direct, and be responsible for the efficient administration of all municipal activities placed under his or her control by this agreement, the bylaws, and policies of Winchendon and Templeton, including all officers appointed by the Chief Administrative Officer and their respective agencies. B, be responsible for the coordination of the activities of all agendas under his or her control with the activities of all other municipal agencies, including those elected by the voters of Winchendon and Templeton and those appointed by other elected officials. C, appoint and may remove, subject to the civil service law and any collective bargaining agreements as may be applicable, all department heads, all officers, subordinates, and employees for whom no other method of selection is provided by this agreement or by the bylaws and policies of Winchendon and Templeton or otherwise. Appointments made by the Chief Administrative Officer of all employees employed by Winchendon and Templeton shall be subject to confirmation process of the boards of selectmen in Winchendon and Templeton as currently in effect. Appointments made by the Chief Administrative Officer in furtherance of his or her duties relative to this intermunicipal agreement shall be subject to confirmation by the select boards in the appropriate town. Basically, that means that he has the authority to appoint, remove, etc., all department heads, anything else under this agreement.
He's subject to whatever our bylaws are and whatever the previous civil service law.
Civil service law.
Yep.
Okay. D, administer personnel-related matters, including bargaining with municipal employees, and shall fix the compensation of all municipal employees appointed by the Chief Administrative Officer within the limits established by appropriation and by the bylaws, policies, and/or past practices of Winchendon and Templeton, or by collective bargaining agreement. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay. E, assure that all of the provisions of the Massachusetts General Law, the Inter-municipal agreement, and the bylaws and policies of Winchendon and Templeton that require enforcement by him or her, or by officers or employees subject to his or her supervision, are faithfully carried out and enforced. I'm finding a lot of things that are already in the policies and bylaws of both towns and such like that, so but I think it's good to have it reiterated
Absolutely.
in the intermunicipal. Okay.
Audrey, can I just go back to D for 1 second?
Certainly.
Administer personnel-related matters, including bargaining with municipal employees, or at the very bottom it says collective bargaining. Does that mean that negotiating? Does that mean, bargaining is collective bargaining, and what does that particular bargaining word mean?
Okay.
I think that not that there's a difference, but there's a difference. It looks like redundant, but I don't think that's really what that means. I think that means like negotiating with employees for hire, so
Yeah.
I would just,
Okay.
I would prefer to use a different term if it doesn't have to do with collective bargaining, because
Yeah.
that's really the generalized term for, highway, sewer, police, like
Yes,
that kind of.
negotiating,
So,
contracts.
if you don't mind,
New contracts, yep. Okay,
I just wanted to have that a little bit clearer.
absolutely.
Well, doesn't Mr. Terenzini currently, he does the collective bargaining for the unions of Templeton, correct?
Right, collective bargaining is for a union, but bargaining with municipal employees is more like negotiating or
Well, that would-
talking through.
That would be non-union personnel that are hired.
Then I think that we need to clarify that.
Yeah.
I'm
You
just
wanna-
asking
so
for
you
some
wanna
further
put-
clarification
or-
on that.
So what you want to, I just want to make sure we get the right wording in there, so.
Right, so
And
do
that-
you
it-
understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, no, I got
Okay.
it. So it would be collective bargaining agreement.
It says that at the end, or by
and so-
collective bargaining.
And/or non-union personnel, would that?
Yeah, like maybe including, negotiating with non-union municipal employees, something, just a little bit
Well, it
more
does say,
wording
shall
with
fix the
that?
compensation of all municipal employees appointed by the chief administrative officer within the limits established. And then it would go on to say the collective bargaining agreements. I think the collective bargaining agreement would be more or less like when the unions are demanding more PTO time.
Right, but when I sit down with an employee, I don't bargain with them. I'm negotiating for their hire, or they are non-union.
Oh, okay, I see.
I'm
You're
do you
referring to the word
understand?
in the first
Okay, I just
line,
want,
yes.
I just would like to change that term.
That first line, yeah. Maybe negotiating with non-union.
Right, that's all. I just wanted to be clear that that's what that meant.
That's fine.
So negotiating with all non-union.
Thanks for going back.
Of course, anytime, please. Employees. And then just leave it at the end, or by collective bargaining agreement. Okay, great, thanks. Okay, E, assure that all of the provisions of the Massachusetts general laws, the intermunicipal agreement, and the bylaws and policies of Winchendon and Templeton that require enforcement by him or her, or by officers or employees subject to his or her supervision, are faithfully carried out and enforced, which is something that he does now. Anything on E? And feel free, if I say anything on E and we get to G and you say, oh, can we go back to E, please speak up.
Certainly.
Okay. F, prepare and submit an annual operating budget and a capital outlay program for Winchendon and Templeton. Anything on F?
Nope.
Does Templeton have any sort of capital planning?
Yes,
We
well,
do, okay.
we haven't had a full capital planning committee, but yes, we have it all laid out
Okay,
on a
good.
grid, and the department heads come before the capital planning committee and all of that, yep.
Cool. Okay. G, assure that a full and complete record of the financial and administrative activities of Winchendon and Templeton is kept, and he or she shall render a complete written report to the Select Board of each of the two towns at the end of each fiscal year, and at such times as the Select Board of each of the two towns may reasonably require.
Okay, so I would like to, in keeping with the rest of the agreement, not to say each of the two towns and to use Winchendon and Templeton respectively.
At Select Board of...
Just for
Yep,
consistency purposes.
perfect, yep.
Winchendon and Templeton, right.
I
May
know it's
reasonably
tricky, but-
require. So that's actually two places in that paragraph, correct?
Correct.
There's two places in that where,
So we would just say to the Select Board
Just
of
remove-
Winchendon and Templeton.
Of the two
And times,
towns in
yeah,
one
I just
place.
would like to keep it all the
Okay.
same.
perfect.
Yep.
Okay, H, execute contracts subject to the bylaws and policies of Winchendon and Templeton. I, have full jurisdiction over the rental and use of all town facilities except school and library buildings and grounds. The chief administrative officer shall be responsible for the maintenance and repair of all town-owned property, including, if authorized by a bylaw establishing a central town maintenance department, school and library buildings and grounds.
Okay, so that's a little bit confusing.
Yep.
Where here in the beginning, it says, except school and library buildings
Right.
and grounds, and then at the end, it says, and. So, I mean, the school, I'm not sure how things operate in your town, but
Yep.
we're a regional and you're not. So with anything over, like if there's a repair or if it's over $5,000, then it is up to the town to fix it. And we're building a new elementary school, which is town-owned. But as far as renting the facilities, we don't have anything to do with that particular thing. But the library and grounds, those are under, the library has a board of trustees. So perhaps that's why it says accept, but then down here it says and. So I think I would like a little more clarification, especially for Templeton, how that's going to work, because we honestly don't, it's a regional school district and they
Right.
have, so that's a little, it doesn't make sense.
I see what you're saying. The way I read it is everything except school and library, unless, say, Winchendon establishes a bylaw and creates a central town maintenance department.
Okay.
So if there's one town maintenance department for everything in the town,
We have a buildings and grounds department now,
then he would
Okay.
be, then
He
he would have
oversees
that
that.
jurisdiction.
Okay.
Right,
if authorized by a bylaw.
right.
See, we don't have a bylaw for that, but
No,
we
we
do
don't either.
have a, we've just merged our DPW and cemetery and buildings and grounds. So,
Okay. Well, those are still.
makes sense, but
Just town properties. It's not school or library.
Right.
So unless,
Town owns our library, so I just,
okay.
maybe perhaps I could just ask Carter for a bit more
Okay.
clarification on that, if we could just make a question mark with that.
Absolutely.
And that we can look more into that particular paragraph.
Absolutely. Because we don't have a central maintenance
No.
department. I mean, we've got,
No, each building has its own, no, because the school
Yeah.
department comes before the school maintains their own buildings
Right.
except for major expenditures, which they come to the
Right.
town for, and
Yeah.
we vote for it in
Libraries,
capital or
right.
whatnot.
So yours kind of works the same as ours?
Sure,
Okay.
sure, we don't, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think if there was a bylaw establishing it, that would give, I
Yeah.
think that's,
and that may have been something more specific to Lee and Lennox, because this document is based on their agreement.
Right, so
And
we have a,
They
yeah.
may have been looking and
Okay.
doing some sort of central, so
I
whether
just
or
don't
not
want
we
something
need
to
it, I don't know.
conflict with something
Yeah,
else,
absolutely.
and then we say, oh, well, now we can't do that, or, oh, they can't do that.
Well,
So,
why don't we do this, and it might
can
be
we
easier.
just highlight that one?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we might find an easier solution. It just says, have full jurisdiction over rental and use of all town facilities except school and library buildings and
So it's
ground. The
not
chief
the-
administrative officer shall be responsible for the maintenance and repair of town-owned property.
Maintenance and repair. Oh,
Maintenance and repair of town-owned property.
okay.
And then strike the rest of the language. Because we don't have bylaws saying that,
Right.
you know what I mean? There's no
Well,
central
we
limit.
have a regional school agreement that talks about maintenance and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So
They
if we
bring it-
strike it, it might be okay for Winchendon, but not okay for Templeton.
Right, okay.
So I don't, can we just, like I said, so
Yeah,
we,
we'll
so
have
that
to
Audrey
research
can keep
that one.
reading, can we just
Yeah.
highlight that? And I'm happy to send, you know, an email, you know, to
Sure.
Carter, just specifically about I.
Sure.
Yeah, How
Okay.
this is going to affect the regional,
Right, or
System.
just, right.
yeah,
Okay.
Okay,
sure.
thank you.
Of course. You're welcome. Okay. J, inquire at any time into the conduct of office of any officer, employee, or department under his or her supervision. K, assure that a full and complete inventory of all property owned by Winchendon and Templeton, both real and personal, is kept. L, make such recommendations from time to time to the boards of selectmen of Winchendon and Templeton, which, in the chief administrative officer's judgment, are deemed necessary or desirable. M, authorize any subordinate officer or employee to exercise any power or perform any function which the chief administrative officer is authorized to exercise or perform, provided, however, all acts performed under any such delegation shall be deemed to be the acts of the chief administrative officer. A lot of words to say. If he says you do that, he's still responsible for the person who does the work.
Okay, I kept reading that.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, in my world, it would be if it's deemed lawful. You know, like someone can't ask me, you know, as an
Yeah.
agent to do something that, you know, is not lawful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah. Now that you read it out loud, it makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Okay. N, determine the existence of a public emergency or danger and shall... The word forms aren't right there. That's my English coming out. All right, well, I'll think about it. And shall assume responsibility for the maintenance of public safety, public order, and enforcement of laws in Winchendon and Templeton. The chief administrative officer shall notify the chair of the Board of Selectmen of Winchendon and Templeton as soon as practical, but within 24 hours of such an emergency or danger and the actions taken. Should the public emergency continue more than 24 hours, the Board of Selectmen of Winchendon and Templeton may meet to review, ratify, or terminate said public emergency. Determine the existence of a public emergency. I mean, I understand what it says, that this, I don't think the verb tenses are right or something. Okay, anything else?
I believe in Templeton, we don't observe by, and I believe that's part of the community emergency response team, and
Ultimately, the town administrator in partnership with police chief, fire chief, but it is ultimately the town administrator's responsibility. He's the
Snow
be-all.
emergency or a water main break, water has to be boiled.
Right,
or-
but they usually contact
Yeah.
the TA, but I think what they're saying here is that ultimately, your town manager or town administrator is
Right.
responsible for that.
Right.
And to notify each board.
Yes.
So,
I think it's covered by M anyways, because if we did have a separation, he could delegate it, even though it's his power, so.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
did you want to see any different wording, Kim?
No, that looks good. I was a little curious on the
Yep.
emergency response, but once again, M's the cover-all for it, so.
Excuse me. O, execute all deeds conveying town real property in Winchendon and Templeton, but that any such conveyance shall have been previously authorized by the vote of town meeting of the respective town pursuant to the applicable provisions of the general laws.
Pretty standard.
Yep.
Respective towns want to put in Winchendon and Templeton
Say that again, Audrey.
instead of the respective town.
Authorized by, are you talking about O's?
Yeah, just put the
Yep,
names.
that's normally how that would be
Leave it
done.
respective town, or do you want to put Winchendon, the
Oh,
actual
wait, hold
names
on.
of the towns?
Property in, but that,
I'm fine with respective town in this instance.
do you want to leave that as respective? Yeah, because it says Winchendon and Templeton about, yeah, that makes
Yeah.
more sense, yep.
Rather than just two. Two could be anyone.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. P, publish an annual report comprising the complete statistical record of the operations of every town department, commission, and committee for the preceding year, and it shall be published annually and made available for distribution to the public not later than 4 months after the end of the period on which the report is based.
We have a bylaw about annual report, and I just thought of that. I'm not sure if this is the, are you able to look that up, Kim, please?
Certainly.
I just don't want them to conflict. What is your current practice? So we have annual meeting the second Saturday in May, and all of our annual reports are, they might even be distributed at voting prior to that. So it's not, I don't know if that's too broad, or it doesn't really comply with our bylaw.
Yeah, the 4 months seems kind of,
Made available for distribution
Does it
to
say
the public
in
not
there,
later
Kim?
than 4 months after the end of the.
I just don't, ours is not worded that way. I think there's a
at the
section
end of the
for
period
annual
on which the report is
or
based. So we're in a new fiscal year
records
now.
and
Yeah, the annual
reports,
report's the
page,
book.
whatever.
Shall be the
No,
duty of
town
the
meeting.
advisory
In May.
committee to make an
In
annual
May.
report of its doings.
Nope, keep going. It's about,
The selectmen in their annual report shall state the actions, no, shall be,
up here,
selected
right here,
to be
Monday
made
preceding
available.
the first Monday in May. So ours is the Monday preceding the first Monday in May, because we have to have them ready for voting.
Yeah, we usually have ours ready to hand out
So maybe
at our
it
annual
could be
meeting.
stated per bylaw
Each-
of
each-
Winchendon
yeah.
and Templeton, rather than being broad this way?
Yep,
Okay.
available to the public as per bylaws of
Okay.
Winchendon and, okay. Q, perform such other functions as may from time to time be assigned to the office of Administrative Officer, of Chief Administrative Officer by the Board of Selectmen of Winchendon and Templeton. All right. Section 2-3, compensation. Chief Administrative Officer shall receive such compensation as may from time to time be established for the office of Chief Administrative Officer by agreement of the parties. Section 2-4, acting Chief Administrative Officer. A, temporary absence. In the absence of the Chief Administrative Officer, the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer shall be designated to exercise the powers and perform the duties of the office during temporary absence. During the first 10 working days of a temporary absence of the Chief Administrative Officer, the parties may revoke such designation by a 2/3 vote of each select board, and, after the expiration of 10 working days, may appoint another qualified officer or employee of the towns of Winchendon or Templeton to serve as acting Chief Administrative Officer until the Chief Administrative Officer shall return and resume his or her duties.
Okay, so the town of Templeton, I don't also believe the town of Winchendon has an assistant chief administrative officer, and this was a boilerplate from Lee and Lennox by the DOR. In Templeton, if there's going to be an absence of the town administrator, it is in the job description of our assistant to the town administrator. However, that position has limiting duties. So I'm not really, I couldn't really think of how to reword some of that, but I'm not sure if your town has something to that effect as well in a job description, but it's like a kind of a automatic designation, but the board is allowed to revoke that if they feel that that is not appropriate at that time.
Right.
So, I mean, our position, not person, I'm sorry, is called something a little bit different. I think the rest of the paragraph is fine about being able, each town should be able to revoke, but it's not called an assistant to the chief administrative officer.
Yeah, we have an executive assistant, Linda Daigle.
Right.
I would have to look to see, I don't know if like Diane said, their bylaw states that the next person in line,
Right.
but with limited powers. I don't know if our executive assistant has or can
So
be.
we'll put that as a
with
question. Right.
With full powers or not. Okay, yeah. And I'm sorry, Diane, and you're in Templeton, it's called the administrative assistant to the town manager?
I think that's,
Is there
ours is just called assistant to the town administrator, but
two?
I was kind of thinking, Audrey, I had made a lot of notes, and I'm happy to put together all the things that we've talked about and send it to the subcommittee and the town administrator of Templeton and your, Keith, your town manager,
To get
just
them-
to say this is kind of where we're at.
Yep.
And we need a little bit more
Clarification.
clarification
Sure.
on things.
That'd be good.
I'm happy to do that.
No, thank you, thank you. Okay, anything else on A at the moment? All right, B, vacancy. Any vacancy in the office of Chief Administrative Officer shall be filled as soon as possible by the parties. But pending such appointment, the parties shall designate a qualified officer or employee of the towns of Winchendon or Templeton to exercise the powers and perform the duties of the Chief Administrative Officer on an acting basis. The appointment of an acting Chief Administrative Officer shall be for a term not to exceed 4 months, provided, however, one renewal not to exceed a second 4 months may be permitted. Kind of straightforward.
Does that make sense timing-wise for
Yeah.
everyone?
Yeah, that's,
Right.
We-
That would give
Yeah.
you up to 8 months with.
I think if you had to do a search, it's
Acting, yes.
going to kind of take a bit of
It could.
time too, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You'd have to find a
absolutely.
man as crazy as Mr. Hickey to fill those shoes.
What did you say?
You'd have to find a man as crazy as Mr. Hickey to fill those shoes.
Rise to the challenge.
Okay.
All right, and then C, powers and duties. The powers of a temporary or acting chief administrative officer shall be limited to matters not admitting of delay, provided, however, no temporary or acting chief administrative officer under A above shall have authority to make any permanent appointment to or removal from any office or position under the town. Now, I want to see how that lines up with our bylaw, because I know that we've got something in there that outlines the powers of enacting.
Okay.
What was that, Audrey?
We,
I'm sorry.
That's
That's under
okay.
C.
Yeah. I just want to check that against what we have on record, because I know that we have language in there.
Yeah.
When you
I
have an
think we do
acting,
too. Yep.
right.
Within the contract, correct?
Yeah, the,
Yeah.
well, our
And
bylaws,
other,
the contract of powers and
okay,
duties.
you know what, we'll have to look at, okay.
Yeah.
The other thing is matters not admitting of delay. I'm sorry, no matter how many times I've read that, I don't quite understand what that language means. Not admitting of delay.
It's-
Cameron?
Yeah, it's supposed to like signify that there's no delay in government. So instead of like where you have an executive session and we couldn't enter executive session without all 5 members, we put in that verbiage so that we can hold a meeting so as not to delay government. So that's the purpose of that. So not admitting delay is if it needs to take place, it can take place.
Okay. Okay, I've never seen that term before in any contract I've ever looked at, but okay, thanks for that clarification.
Well, maybe we'll find better language in what we already have.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, so okay, I'm going to look at our bylaw and I'll look at our agreement too, but again, when I put all the paperwork together, I will state that.
sure. Okay. Section 2.2 what happened to 2-5? I've been meaning to ask that. We go from 2-4 to 2-6. All right. Evaluation of Chief Administrative Officer. There shall be an annual review of the Chief Administrative Officer's job performance conducted by the parties. Big question mark, too open-ended. I want, we need to tie that into whatever maybe the language that we already have in the contracts for the annual review of the town manager. Bring that over or something.
Within this, within section 27A? Sorry.
No, the 2-6 is
Yeah, it's 2-6.
2-6.
evaluation.
There should be an
Yeah.
email. Oh,
Just
okay,
by
so
the
we have to look
parties.
at the, I think ours says, I will ask, and I will put that out there as
Yeah.
well. Okay.
Let's identify the parties.
Yep, in case it already says something.
Exactly.
Okay, yep.
Okay, section 2-7. Schedule of the Chief Administrative Officer. It is expected that the Chief Administrative Officer will devote approximately 3 days per week in Winchendon, and 2 days per week in Templeton, adjusted as appropriate to successfully perform the duties for each of the 2 towns. The parties acknowledge that the duties of each town may be performed from either town. The Chief Administrative Officer shall be allowed vacation, sick days, and personal days pursuant to his or her contract with the town of Winchendon, which will act as host community for employment purposes and which is responsible for the payment of those benefits. The costs associated with both compensation and benefits shall be shared 60%, 40% between Winchendon and
Yeah,
Templeton,
that needs to be
respectively.
reversed.
Yeah,
Flip-flop that.
Winchendon and Templeton respectively for the duration of this agreement.
Right. Okay.
I do have a concern regarding the parties acknowledge that the duties of each town may be performed from either town. My concern is that if we do allow this, right, and say somewhere down the road, I don't think Mr. Hickey would do this, but if this contract were to exist, that there would be no interaction between going to Templeton to sit in there, or perhaps he liked Templeton better and sat in Templeton to perform the duties of Winchendon, so.
I think the way that,
I see what
I
you're
understand that, but I think the reason why he said that is, should the need arise, something happen
Yes.
in the other town, when he's in here, he could be able to
Absolutely.
deal with that.
And I agree, believe that is absolutely something that is necessary to have in there, but it also needs to be
Yeah.
curbed a little bit so that
Yes,
it's.
I agree.
So, when the need arises or something along.
Add that
some-
language,
Yeah,
when the
something.
need
Do
arises.
you want to, I'm sorry, Cameron, because you're not looking at me.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Well, I can't,
Yep.
it echoes in here. So you want to add some more specific
Yeah,
language?
I want to put constraints on that, so it doesn't allow for the purpose of, the town administrator or manager to sit in one office and do the duties that need to be taking place in another town.
Okay.
From one office.
yeah.
So it kind of forces him back and forth.
Yeah, I thought it
Them
was.
to be
it's-
able
it's
to
a more
handle something
Broader.
should it come up.
Yeah, but we shouldn't, again, if, like what Mike said, imagine if he was here and there was an
From either-
emergency or somebody, he could be here and an employee
Right.
from Templeton calls, he's not
Oh,
gonna go
absolutely.
over there. And in the beginning, if we were to do this, that may happen more often, just phone calls, and he relies a lot on technology.
Yes.
So.
No, and I
but
completely
for
agree with that. It's
future-
needed. It's
Yep,
absolutely
I-
needed, that
I-
language.
What was the verbiage you had? Do you remember how you said
I would
that?
have to think of something
The
really.
chief administrator shall be, duties of each town may be performed from either town. I was going to write it down, but I wasn't fast enough. Okay. Something, something, something.
The duties of each town may be performed from either town.
The parties acknowledge that the duties of each town may be performed from either town. That, you wanna say that
When such need arises
when
or
the need
something.
arises. Yeah, that's,
When such.
Well, it's
need-
kind of loose
How about on an
cannon.
as-needed basis?
Yeah, that works too.
I mean, if you want to, when the need arises, well.
right,
the-
yeah.
it- well,
Yeah, no, yeah, more curbed in.
And I think that, this, town manager is very competent and very aware of everything, so maybe it's just as the need arises, so I
Arises.
put that.
Yeah,
And
so
maybe,
the duties of each town
someone
may be
else can think of
performed For either town as need arises.
Yeah.
Is everybody okay with that language?
Yep.
Change?
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe
I'll
we.
think-
as the
Put it
need
in there and I'll
arises.
think about it. I'm not quite sure on that one, but
Oh, so when I send it out to
Yeah.
all of you, and maybe there's some more, if Cameron wants to, if you think that we should narrow that down, it would have to be not just as the need arises, but more on a limited basis. On a, like, you know what I'm saying? Does that make, because you're trying to, if you're going to be in Winchendon for 3 days a week, you're not going to, you don't want to spend 5 days a week in Templeton and say, oh, I'm doing the job in Winchendon. So otherwise, if we don't have a little bit stronger of language, so when I send it out, I'll look up some other contract language.
very good, thank
I
you.
do have one other question about, because I'm not sure if we're, it says prior to the chief administrative officer shall receive such compensation as may, blah, 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 where we're going to do it between the parties, but when it talks about here, allowed vacation, sick, and personal days pursuant to his or her contract, which will act as host community for employment purposes, and which is responsible for the payment of those benefits. It's a little bit confusing that we're going to have, I'm trying to think about how to word this broadly. There's health, dental, life. I don't know what everybody has. So if you're going to be if it says you're the host community for employment purposes, that makes me feel like you have the entire employment contract. That's how I keep reading that. So either we have to be much more specific with that.
So you want it to,
And that's something if we're going to, again, I'm trying to be broad, language about this, that's, part to do with litigation, and we would be needing to discuss that in an executive session. So do you agree that that's a little bit confusing? Because prior to it said each community would have like an employment agreement, but that's not what this says.
Where does it say employment agreement? Do you recall?
It says here.
town of Winchendon will act as host
it
community
was
for
prior
employment
to, I'm
purposes.
Yeah,
sorry.
that's what I'm trying to remember where it was.
And perhaps we haven't gotten to that point. In my head, I'm generalizing. But the other thing is this agreement is based on Lee and Lennox, where the chief administrative officer for a hypothetical is in Lee, and the assistant chief administrative officer was in Lenox. So each one had an employment agreement. I just think
Oh, yeah.
this language isn't exactly right for what I believe that
doing,
we
yeah.
would be looking for.
Yeah.
Does that make more sense to you about how that was developed from the DOR?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, we can come back, since we have other questions on A, I can pose that as a question in the email.
Yeah. It does say that town of Winchendon, which will act as host community for employment purposes and which is responsible for the payment of those benefits. So
But
to me,
those,
that means we would be paying Blue Cross. We would be making the payment.
right, but it doesn't quite say that there.
Right.
It only says vacation, sick, and personal.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that,
Yeah.
again, when it comes to
Right.
the contract piece of it, that would not be discussed in open session, so.
Right.
But we do agree that we are changing the wording Templeton and Winchendon, and then I'll just pose
Yep.
the questions in an email to
Yep.
everyone.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, B, I don't think I read B. Representatives of the select boards from both towns, again, Winchendon and Templeton, will meet regularly as needed to discuss issues that may arise in the day-to-day performance of the chief administrative officer.
We're going to change that to Winchendon and Templeton?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Something that's been rolling around in my mind, and it's not part of this, and I'm not sure how practical, no, I won't use the word practical. Should he track his time in each town? And if he works, takes calls at night or something, I'm not saying he should, punch in and punch out, punch a clock, but is there any need, do you think, or benefit to the towns, just to get a sense of how much time he is actually spending doing?
Keith's already committed to if he needed to work on Saturdays or something, or go into the office on Saturday here or Saturday there, he would do that and work at home. I don't think I need to track his time, because he communicates what's
wanted to
going on
toss it out
constantly,
there.
so.
I would think that that would be a hindrance to any town manager or job to have to track. I
Okay,
mean, when you have, the law says when you have an exempt employee that, I don't know what's in your contract, but let's just say there's 50 hours. Like, you have to work a minimum of 50, but if you want to work 80, that's, we don't pay you for, the law
Right.
doesn't say
Yep.
to pay more,
Yes.
so you're salaried, and there's a reason for it. And I believe that when we were at the meeting with Zach Blake, I believe that Mr. Hickey said, I know that I'm going to have to work more, and he was willing to take that on. So
Okay.
I understand what you're
Yeah,
saying
or even-
wholeheartedly, but it just makes
Yeah.
it, when he's so busy, like,
Or- yeah, or
doing,
just, just someone keeping.
No, I understand your concern,
Okay.
where it might be to the point of, if he's spending a lot of time, particularly in Templeton, or more time in Winchendon, something that we should definitely be aware of, so that, because this contract is gonna be something new, and we're not entirely sure of the situation that's going to arise. For the terms of tracking it, I don't think it needs to be something, fixed on the hourly
Oh, yeah.
basis.
No, that's
But
not-
it
that
would
wasn't my
definitely be
intention.
something important to know, get the feedback from Mr. Hickey, what do you feel comfortably? So, and just kind of reiterate it to him.
Yeah.
Where do you feel like you're spending a lot of time? What is your, your designated? Are you really spending the 60-40 split like we had agreed on? And if not, maybe there might be some renegotiation on some of that. So I definitely think that
Thank you
is
for-
something to keep in mind.
And the words, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
good.
thought
Thank
there
you.
was something that you read, Audrey, or maybe it said it is understood that the chief administrative officer may have to be in one place more than the other on occasion. Perhaps I don't know, hopefully.
I don't think so.
Okay, hold on.
Not as part of this one, anyway.
I don't know, maybe perhaps I read, perhaps it'd be, well, I'm not really sure where I read that, but I swear, unless I was looking over other agreements when I was looking at this too, but,
Yeah, I don't think, this was the first place I think that
do
it
you want me to,
indicated.
within the questions and about section 2-7, would you like me to pose that as a question too, either tracking time or making sure, is there something different that you would like me to ask for a question?
Is there something, did I just read something about, okay, the annual review of the Chief Administrative Officer's job performance?
Where was,
Did I see something,
what section are you in, Audrey?
I'm trying to remember where I saw it.
There's 2-6.
Or actually, maybe it was 2-7B, just as representatives of the boards from Winchendon and Templeton will meet regularly as needed to discuss issues that may arise regarding the performance. Do we need anything in here?
I don't know if it'd
Just
be a good
touching-
idea to formalize the tracking of hours.
No, that's not what I'm
Okay,
referring to. No,
Well,
I
think that's
agree
what-
that.
I believe that's why it's there, for boards to meet regularly as needed. If there's an issue that's arise, the two boards will get together and say, it's coming back to us that Keith's working
Whatever, yeah.
over there. That's when the two boards would get together and say, what's going on, causing the problem, and how do we correct it, or how do we compensate either way. I think that's why that language is there.
Yeah, but I'd rather be proactive and set up, representatives of the boards shall meet with the chief town administrator monthly?
Yeah,
It's
I
just
agree with you.
something
I agree with
to
you.
say, hey, how's it
on
going?
that.
What are you
Regularly
finding?
could mean every 6 months, and that
Yeah.
could turn out to be regular. So,
And that also doesn't say meet with the chief administrator, it just says the representative will meet to discuss the issues.
well, it's represent, I think that they,
I'd like to, it's just something,
oh,
have a
you know what,
meeting
though?
with,
I would, me personally, I mean, wouldn't you want the person who's doing the job to be involved in that meeting? How are things go? I don't want it to be that people meet and discuss the chief administrative officer when he's not there.
yeah,
That
again.
doesn't make sense, so I hear what you're
doesn't
saying.
Yeah,
That-
I would
So you
want
want
him
to
there.
expand that
Yeah.
a little bit?
B.
Oh, okay, so let me, expand, and be more specific?
Yes,
And that they,
any thoughts on how often
okay, be more often,
should be meet.
and that
with him?
this says, as needed to discuss issues that may arise in the day-to-day performance. But do you think that the chief administrative officer should be in on those meetings?
Yes,
Okay, so,
Absolutely.
Meet with the chief administrator of both towns to discuss any needs that arise.
okay, so we just have to, okay, so he should be there. Okay, he, she.
Right. I
Okay,
just say
I-
chief administrative officer.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Gender
Just to,
boards,
right here, it says to discuss them, and that's not really
Right.
appropriate
Well,
in any
and-
given world in municipal government.
And any sense of how often?
I would keep that loose on the regularly,
Okay.
because, there may be times where we need to meet, maybe once every other week, say there's an issue going on, or maybe everything's running smoothly and
Right.
both boards feel comfortable.
Could we say,
s-
but not longer than 2 months to have to go by? Could we say not longer than 60 days?
I would highly avoid putting anything too fixed like that in there, because then
Okay.
if it does expire 60 days, if we feel really comfortable, everything's running great and smooth, and we don't need to meet, then there's that. I
Yes,
mean,
but perhaps an email could go out and say, according to, I want to say, wouldn't you agree or disagree that if we move forward with this the first year, it's minimum, the first year is going to be a lot, and to not have any specific time frame to get together could be a little bit dangerous.
I think the coordination of having a town manager and a town administrator and operating in both would be a lot easier to get everybody to say, hey, this is a good time to meet, because he can correspond with both boards for these meetings to take place. So I'm fairly certain that these meetings will be taking place very often within the first month and two, but as this goes out.
I would think that you're going to get a report every meeting on how things are going, because that's the first questions everybody's going to ask. How is it going? How are you spending your time? So twice a month, we're going to be asking the same question in both towns.
Being too loose in an agreement, though, can come back to burn you later. It's an agreement, and we haven't gotten to the actual time frame of the agreement. And, you know, just like with any union, any kind of contract, if you say, well, we're, you know, regularly, I can make that every 8 months. I'm not saying, again, I think that your town manager seems to be, you have stated that he is very good about communicating, but this says about representatives from each board. What if our representative doesn't want to come? I mean, there needs to be some more,
Well,
you know.
if the two towns aren't cooperating, then that would be a serious issue, and I think
agree.
that would be very problematic. I think
How about if we
that's-
just bring it up as a question?
Yeah.
And it can be, you know, I kind of wrote a few notes.
Okay, sure. Okay, I think that's all in Article 2. Article 3, term. Section 3-1. This agreement shall become effective upon signing and shall terminate on June 30th, 2018, and may, subject to majority approval of the select boards in scratch
Both
both towns.
Winchendon and
Winch-
Templeton.
yeah,
Yeah.
be extended for up to 2 terms ending on June 30th, 2019 and June 30th, 2020, respectively. If at any time either community would like to terminate this agreement, a 180-day notice shall be sent to the other community.
I would like to make the recommendation to change that instead of the June 30th, 2019 and June 30th, 2020. For the sake of continuity, we just put it as June 30th, 2020, but keep in there the back-out clause where if either party by majority vote of its select board notify the other party that it wishes to terminate the agreement on June 30th for any intervening year by sending the 180-day notice. So that way, if we can just draw it out instead of having to re-meet and discuss the contract and the term, we can just keep it at 2020.
Right.
And then any problems that arise, we can do it at regular meetings.
Okay,
Right, because we have the back-out clause, 180 is out.
yeah, I'm fine with
It
that.
looks stronger to have a longer term, knowing that there's
Right.
an opt-out clause. However, could I make a commentary on the opt-out clause of 120 days? Is it just because?
180 days,
I'm sorry, 180 days, but is it just because?
that gives you enough time to try to put a search committee together and move forward.
Why would you, so, I'm sorry, you know, Chief Administrative Officer, I'm not really liking how you dressed to come to work today. I'm not really liking how I feel like the opt-out is there's no,
Reason, justification?
Yes, that
It's-
whole,
so just for
It
any
needs to
reason.
be-
I mean, we're in employment at will state, and I still think that's very difficult, but I think that you, Winchendon, you meaning Winchendon, and us meaning Templeton, would want a little bit more, is it cause? It's just not working? Can we have,
I think that would be spelled out in the actual contract itself.
in an employment contract?
Correct. This is just for us. If we decide, if your board or our board decides this is not working, we can then say, we don't think it's working. But in the actual employment contract, you're going to have all that language that's needed.
Right, so how about if I do a hypothetical? So let me explain. I'm sure, as people well know, the town of Templeton has had a difficult time finding a town administrator suitable for our needs, or they're not available out there. So for us, we've gone for over I've done 3 years, so almost 4 years, it's been part-time. And that's been a lot of, it's transient, and it's not, as the DOR pointed out, it's not strong enough. So let's say that we enter into this agreement, and 2 months from now, Winchendon or Templeton says, yeah, this just isn't working. So you still have a full-time manager, and we have nothing. And we're back at the drawing board, and we've not had, so just, again, for me, I would kind of want to know, what kinds of things? Again, I don't like what you look like, and again, I'm hypothesizing, but what are some of the reasons that could, is it reasonable to say, okay, so he's not spending enough time in each town, and that not necessarily would be in an employment contract. That's his employment contract, anybody's employment contract for benefits, for time off, for duties. Some of it is in here. It cannot conflict in an employment contract to the intermunicipal agreement. So I don't want to see either town. Imagine if we just said, again, if we said, yeah, we're out, you still get your full-time
Yes, we do.
town manager back. And, I'm not saying that scares me. Again, from what I have seen and read, and your board is very respectful, and you can tell how he interacts, but it scares me that Templeton is going to be right back at the drawing board with no real, I don't like how you look today, I'm sorry, or just...
Yeah,
Does that make
whole
sense,
paragraph
Audrey?
needs to be either here or it needs to be somewhere.
Yeah, and I think it has to
Definitely,
be fair to both
probable
communities.
cause,
So,
not
would you
probable
like to
cause,
add
but
the language?
performance-related.
Let me come back to this, okay? So let me see this.
Sure.
I think I know where you're trying to go, and I understand it,
This is-
so let me...
I'm sorry if I don't always explain myself
No,
well.
I understand, okay,
That needs
so,
to be-
okay. If at any time either community would like to terminate the agreement, a 180-day notice shall be given to either, to both either community.
to the other
With a reasonable
community.
explanation. Would that kind of fill what you were looking for?
Well, number one, I'd like to replace the word community with Board of Selectmen, because it would be a Board of Selectmen decision,
Yep,
correct?
BOS, yeah.
Absolutely. So time either community would like to terminate, it should be sent to the appropriate town's Board of Selectmen.
Right.
Okay, so let me, appropriate towns, BOS. Okay.
So,
But, I'm not so sure that we don't need something giving that sort of protection in maybe both agreements. This intermunicipal one, and then any employment agreement.
Okay.
So,
employment agreement spells out pretty much, the contract's pretty well standard. It lays out reasons for dismissal.
Yeah, we
Just
don't-
cause, reasonable cause, it's all in the
So
regular
could we
contract.
just say that notification would mirror? Really, it might not. It could be that it's honestly not working
Right, well,
for
that's-
each community, but,
That's why I'm saying a reasonable explanation be relayed.
okay, so let me write reasonable. Okay.
I wouldn't like to make mention, by putting in the clause of reasonable explanation, if either board by majority vote decides to back out of this agreement with a 180-day notice, to the example of, I don't like your shirt, let's rescind him, or let's cancel this contract, would mean that there may be an ulterior motive. There might be something else in there. And I think by leaving out that clause of reasonable explanation to just back up, I don't know if that would be able to be done in executive session by that board. I am fairly certain it would be able to be done. For whatever reason it may be, I think it shouldn't be disclosed. Or, if you want to disclose that, I like the way it sits now, because
Okay.
I don't think as a community we need to know the reason why, but if they decide that they do not like, or we do not like this example, that means something's not working in the agreement, period. And I don't think that any of us are that immature that we would come to the point of saying something, I don't like the way he's dressed, or vice versa, or whatever a reasonable explanation would be. I don't think it's very...
Okay, so how about if I pose the question to be, that we have some concern about just walking away for some kind of frivolous reason?
But I would argue that 180, that's a half a year's notice. And if it does come down to that in this agreement, 6 months, that's reasonable notice. I think that, there's not much else we can do on that.
Right.
Okay.
yeah, and reasonable is, what's
That could
reasonable
be-
to me is
right.
not,
Okay,
so
that
it's-
makes sense too. So you just want to change it to appropriate town's Board of Selectmen and not just to the other community?
Right.
Right.
Okay, yep, I will ask for that. Okay, that makes more sense, talking it out.
Did you get it also, at the beginning of that sentence is, if at any time either community would like to terminate,
Oh, do I not?
either
am I not
Board
on
of
the right
Selectmen.
page?
Board, yeah, on the back page of that, so right here at the top, she wants to cross out community to boards.
Yeah, in both
Oh, I
places.
put appropriate towns Board of Selectmen.
Okay,
I-
would like to terminate this agreement. 180-day notice shall be sent to,
Yep, I'll change, they should both be changed.
yeah.
Okay,
Right.
yep, I made a note of that down the bottom.
All right, great, thanks.
Thanks, Audrey. Yep.
All right. Article 4, notices. Section 4-1. Notices pursuant to this agreement shall be given by first-class mail, postage prepaid to the Select Board chairs of Winchendon and Templeton and to their respective town clerks. Alternatively, notices required pursuant to this agreement may be personally served on the respective chairs of the Select Board. Notice shall be deemed as given as of the date of personal service or as the postage mark of such written notice as sent by first-class mail. Could there be any notices important enough that you should request a return receipt?
Yeah, and I don't
If
like.
just go by the post date, doesn't mean it actually got where it needed to go.
That is correct. Alternatively, notices required pursuant to this agreement may be personally served on the respective chairs of the Select Board. I don't agree with that at all. It needs to come to the, it can be
Yeah.
written to the chairman of the board, the town of Templeton, chairman of the board, but it needs to be hand-delivered to town hall, also to the town clerk, not to,
Not finding the chair wherever they may
Imagine if the Board of
be.
Selectmen person just puts it in his pocket and forget, no, I
Delivered
don't
to
like
the-
that at all. That
Why-
needs,
So you want to change that to hand delivered to the town clerk of each town, of each,
I would like to strike that. Notice shall be deemed as given as of the date of personal service. I don't even want it to be well, if you deliver it personal service, it needs to be time-stamped through either the town clerk
Right.
or as the postmark, or sent by first class. So you want return receipt, correct, Audrey?
Yes.
And if you're gonna, it must be time-stamped by the
Yes.
appropriate
It can be
town.
personally delivered to the town.
I want to be
hall.
clear on
town
the,
clerks.
yes.
And time
Yeah,
stamped.
and, yes, and not, so is it okay if we strike alternatively notice required to the personal respective chairs of the board?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
fine with
thank you. And time stamped and return receipt, okay, we'll clarify that a little bit, thank you.
Okay, Article 5, general provisions.
I think I made a mess of this.
Excuse me, Article 5, Section 5-1, general provisions. A, unless otherwise provided in this agreement, each party shall act by majority vote of its board, of its select board.
Board of Selectmen,
I'm all right with select board, but each town shall act by majority vote of
party?
its select board.
which,
Under A, yeah, just take out party, replace it with town.
Town, yep.
B, no change or modification of this agreement shall be valid unless it shall be in writing and signed by the parties. Who are the parties? We need to identify
Winchendon and
that.
Templeton.
So
Who?
parties in the beginning of the
Selectmen.
contract
Selectmen of Winchendon and Templeton.
is here. They shall be, the town of, right here,
The parties seek to share.
collectively to be referred to as the parties in the very, very beginning of the contract.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
It says that it's collectively referred to as the
Okay.
parties,
Okay,
but
that's fine.
that's what that means.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, that's, yeah,
Okay.
I missed that. Yeah, so I'm fine then, just leave
Yeah,
parties
okay.
in there.
If you, we can not have that word in there,
No,
but
I'd
that's
rather tie
what
it back to that
means.
beginning.
Yeah, that's fine.
C, the text herein shall constitute the entire agreement between parties. And D, if any provision or any portion thereof contained in this agreement is held unconstitutional, invalid, or unenforceable, the remainder of this agreement or portion thereof shall be deemed severable, shall not be affected, and shall remain in full force and effect. Typical gobbledygook.
Well, it just means that just
Yeah.
because one, like,
Yeah,
you know,
if they
say if it
don't
was
like-
Article 4(1)A, if
Yeah.
that was not correct, that would be, but the rest of the agreement would be fine.
Still holds. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And then there's the last,
Yep, Section 6, dual indemnification. Section 6-1. And in brackets, town council is to provide dual indemnification language to protect each town from chief administrative officers' impropriety while working in their partner community. So there will be a clause in there.
yeah, I
We
think.
don't know what that clause is yet.
Right, well, we won't until we finish up the agreement, and I think some of that had to do with whatever they were working on through the state
state.
legislation too, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
conflict of interest.
Does that make
stuff
sense,
like
Cam?
that.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember Zach talking
So-
about that
okay.
specifically.
All right, so that is the agreement. Okay, so Diane, you're going to write that up. You've got everyone's email.
If I don't, I will,
Just go
yes,
back through
because
that,
I had
yes.
all that chain of email that didn't, yes, and I will be including our town administrator and your town and
right.
manager, so
Right.
everyone,
Right.
and it would go out to the rest of our board members through the town administrator and town manager, not through us.
Through this- yeah, the
Just because
subcommittee.
there are clarifications and we should not be discussing business via email.
If
So-
we could too, I'd want to make sure that this is, we need to obtain the Word document copy of this before any changes are actually made to this document.
I believe that, isn't that what Keith Hickey sent to us, was the Word document?
Yes, so, well, what I'm suggesting here is that we take this document here, and when we make the edits and changes, we do a black line, so that we can see exactly what was
Track
changed.
changes.
Sure, no
Yes.
problem.
So
Well,
that we
I-
know
yeah,
nothing.
I would look to say that, once the changes are made or the questions are answered, we then have another meeting,
Okay.
finalize the changes.
Do you want to establish a meeting for, I think, next Thursday? Would that work for everybody?
If that would give, number one, Diane enough time to get this out, and number two, enough time to get some responses
So
back.
the Word document, when you can edit and change, you can do strike-throughs,
Yeah.
and it moves over, and you can also ask questions, and it comes up as little, okay, I've only used that a couple times, but most, Holly can help me with that.
Yeah, the dotted lines over to
Yes,
the
and
side,
you
and
are
then,
asking if, well, okay, so I guess I'm just concerned, yes, I would, I don't know if town council will have to be,
Why don't we hold it?
and I think between, although I think between Mr. Hickey and whomever, again, our town administrator is only, it will be in his seat until August 1st. So, and I'm not sure that,
Okay.
I'm sending it to him because he's who
Right.
we
So,
are with, but.
I would say we plan a tentative meeting for next Thursday.
Okay.
And that way, if we don't have the language, we meet up the following Thursday. If we have them scheduled, we can back
Okay.
out of them. Does that
So-
make sense?
Okay, let me look at
Instead of having to,
Having to try to schedule, if we coordinate
So
it,
that
say,
would
if we get all
be
the, next Thursday and the following.
13th
Yeah.
and the 20th.
And that way, if it doesn't allow us enough time next week to get all the questions answered and the language changed, we can always shift it to the
Yeah, that
following
makes
week.
perfect
Yeah,
sense.
however
Yeah.
much time we need, we're going to take.
Yeah.
So next Thursday is the 13th.
Yep,
Yes.
That would work for me.
okay.
Works for me as
Does
well.
that work for all of?
Yeah.
Okay, so we would have to post it in each respective
Yeah.
town?
Yep.
Yep.
And, okay, so Thursday, would we be saying at 6 PM again?
Does that work for
It works
everybody?
for me.
Yeah, I'll try not to get caught up in the audit season again.
It's okay.
No, audit
Or make
season's, it's just ending for me, so it's a little hectic right now, but next week it's
Do
done.
you need it to be a little bit later,
Nope,
Kim, with
I'll-
6:30?
I will be here for 6 o'clock on
Oh,
the
it's no
dot.
problem.
I was about to go into recess, just to give you an extra few minutes.
No, yeah, I was gonna reach out to
So-
Bill and say I might be a little bit late, but
At this point in time, since we have these questions, And each community would, is part of the question going to be about employment contracts? Like whether or not because that was a little bit confusing. So there's no need to go into executive session, is that
Oh,
correct?
I would think you'd want to get as much done tonight.
Okay.
And that way, if there's any other things that come up.
Oh, so the come up during that would have to be a separate email.
Correct.
Okay.
I do have a question regarding the,
Can't.
what?
Oh, were you gonna talk about that? Can't.
This?
Executive.
That?
Yeah.
No, can't.
Has Mr. Hickey expressed a time that he wants to discuss this?
What's that?
Has he just discussed the time that he wants to talk about his
No.
contracts or anything like that?
No, he's
basically,
waiting.
My understanding is that we're going to look at the next piece
Okay.
of the puzzle, and then how we finish that out.
Okay, excellent,
That would be in the next.
certainly.
But yeah, I would think we would go into executive and try to get this piece.
Just to ask some
But one
questions,
thing- Go ahead.
just to solidify some of it so that the contract, the intermunicipal agreement can be looked at as well? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Do we have a template for the employment agreement? Because, as we said at the beginning, there's going to be this intermunicipal agreement,
Right.
and then Winchendon would have an employment agreement, and Templeton would
Now,
have.
we do, well, no, I
Okay.
did not,
I haven't seen,
because I wasn't understanding where we were going to be at, I didn't
Right.
bring any
Right, That's
template.
why this piece has to be worked on. For the cost sharing pieces
Can
of it.
can we
Right.
possibly not have an executive session, and could we just ask generalized questions? I'm pretty sure in one of the emails, Mr. Hickey said that if needed be, he would discuss his contract publicly.
you did.
But I do not want to that's not right
His
to do that
absence,
right
yep.
now. So until, again, I don't have a template, so for us to negotiate, there's
I'd
only
rather
Cameron and
wait.
I, and we really can't.
I don't think we're negotiating, we're trying to share knowledge.
We're just trying to share knowledge. Okay,
Correct.
so,
On our current contract, to understand how it would break out.
in preparation for. I think this was the most confusing part in the emails, and I do not want to have
No,
any kind of violation.
that's why we can do this. You go into, because we're sharing knowledge on how the contract would split.
Okay,
So you could,
so you're, okay, and that was given permission of,
that's why
correct.
Mr. Hickey
Okay.
sent this information.
Okay, great. So the chair would have to declare.
Madam Chair?
I just want to clarify so that I make sure I understand and everybody else understands. You'll be meeting again I know you're going to go into executive session.
Right.
Then you're going to meet again next week over some of the stuff you've already discussed. When do you anticipate bringing it to a Board of Selectmen? That's my concern, because I want to make sure I'm there, as well as whoever else I know wants to be there. So that's my question.
We're hoping to meet next Thursday if we can get answers back on the items that we have questions. I would imagine that by the end of next Thursday, we will be in a position to say what date we will be meeting with the boards. If we don't meet next Thursday, it'll be the Thursday after. Any thoughts on that? I mean, as soon as we're done, we're going to get it out to
Right.
both
I thought that
boards,
we
and
would
that
have
will-
a joint session,
Yes, it would be a joint session.
and that should be definitely, I agree with you about, again, each board, public commentary is different for every community, but people.
And I feel strongly that you need to be able to allow public commentary that time.
Right.
Because
Oh,
five
absolutely.
people
Oh, yeah.
making a decision without asking the town how they feel
Right.
is an issue. And I want to be clear that what we're doing does not, I did have some clarification on the charter and bylaws. It's more in the charter than the bylaws. But I want that very clear, that we are not, you as a Board of Selectmen are not doing something against the charter, because it does talk about a full-time manager in Winchendon, not splitting his time. So I just want to be very clear about
Right.
that.
Our next
Thank you.
Our next meeting is the 17th.
Yes, I know.
So if,
Our next meeting,
Well, theirs is-
Our next meeting is Monday?
Yeah, we have a.
We have
It would likely be a separate meeting just for the Templeton Board and the Winchendon Board to come together for the
Yeah, I'm
sole
not
purpose
sure if it would be
of doing
able
this.
to be
And
done.
I will most certainly recognize.
Okay, and if you will,
Speaking for
I
myself.
won't come next Thursday, I'll just listen. But if you will be clear about what's going to happen at the end, I would appreciate it.
Certainly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Most definitely.
Exemption, okay.
If you want to take Christine, she's from the Gardner News.
Sure. Come up to the mic, please.
Cameron, we have to read exactly.
Gardner News? I just had a question.
I'm sorry, one second.
It's okay.
Will he be called,
Into the mic, please.
will he be called a town manager in Winchendon and a town administrator in
No.
Templeton? Or will it be
Don't know.
just- you
I
don't know
I
that
would
yet?
assume it would be one title.
One title?
According
Chief
to
of-
this intermunicipal agreement, they would be, he or she would be called the Chief Administrative Officer.
Okay, I was just trying to make that clarification. Make sure. Okay, thanks.
Sure. That's okay.
Just a quick question for the,
Introduce yourself,
Yeah.
please.
Greg Vine from the Winchendon Courier. Just a
Hi.
quick question for the Templeton representatives. I understood that you had extended Mr. Terenzini's time in Templeton until the end of this month. If a contract or an agreement between the town and Templeton isn't reached prior to that, will you be looking to extend his contract another month or
We're
until
not
Mr.
able to discuss that.
Able to discuss,
Pardon?
right.
We're not able to discuss that. That's part of his contract. We can't, it's confidential.
We would
Okay,
have
but
to meet with the rest of our board.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just wondering if technically the town could be without an administrator.
Well, I think at that point, that's when an acting town administrator would be
Right,
named.
yeah,
But
Okay.
Thanks for the question, though.
That's all right.
Mr. Barbaro,
I move that we go into executive session for potential for executive session to be held under exemption number 2, to conduct a strategy session, preparations for negotiating with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining session or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, subject town manager.
I so do declare. Needs to be a roll call vote. Mr. Barbaro?
Aye.
Is it Miss?
Haley Brooks? Yes.
Okay.
Selectwoman
Is that
Haley
the
Brooks?
Okay, aye. And Ms. Forts?
Aye.
Okay, and chair votes aye. And we will reconvene in open session for the sole purpose of adjournment. We are now in executive session. Thank you very much.